Hey, yo, what's up, everybody? Motley GM here. Today, I'm gonna get a little rambly. This video has been inspired by some videos I've watched, some articles I've read, and the comments I've mostly seen in both of those. Now, I won't go into all the multiple sources that I pulled some of these ideas from, but if you've been in touch in the community at all, I think you'll catch my drift. Now, I'm going to go over these subjects at a relatively surface level. There will be themes and ideas here that can probably be long videos all of their own right, and I will admittedly be giving a super reductive look at history. This both for brevity and because that history isn't the focus of what I'm talking about here. So historians out there, please, please, please forgive me. I'm not trying to brush history off here. It's just not the focus. Now, what I really want to talk about here is this golden age of tabletop RPGs we seem to be in, the creators of the game that sparked our hobby, and the multiple communities that make up the tabletop RPG community at large, of which I am a very small part of. This will be laden with my personal perspective and opinion, so take it for what it is, a little entertainment and a peer into the mind of a GM that loves tabletop RPGs. Now, I'm sure if you're watching this, you have heard someone say that we are living in the golden age of tabletop RPGs. And you know what? I think they're right. I agree with that statement. But to understand that, let's first take a very short look into the past. What we now call tabletop RPGs can trace its origins, from my understanding of it, from 1800s war games that Prussian military officers played to help them make quick decisions in battle. Those were, I'm sure, inspired by something before that, and I'm going to breeze over a ton of history in between there, but that is where our games can trace its roots to, at least. Now, those games evolved into other militaries using similar systems, and people getting a hold of such games and turning them into games that they could play on tables. Now, this, again, has its own history and branched off into its own stuff, but that's not relevant here. Now, those war games that ended up being tabletop war games played by civilians, they end up evolving into what we now call tabletop RPGs. Now, once more, I'm going to say it again. I don't want to beat the subject here. Very reductive look at history, but I think that suffices for the video. In 1974, Gary Gygax and David Arneson released the phenomenon of their creation, Dungeons & Dragons. It was a result of work done by the two following the 1971 Chainmail release, and Chainmail was a medieval miniature war game rule set that was used as the basis for D&D, from what I understand of how that all went down. Now, we have Gary and David to ultimately thank for our hobby and owe them a raise of our tankards at least once for creating what has become a worldwide obsession and a huge community of people from all walks of life. We cannot forget that, and we shouldn't forget that. A huge thanks to David Arneson and Gary Gygax, and extend it to your family. Now, that being said, let me take a moment to quickly address something that's being said and talked about quite a bit out there. I won't go into super detail, but let's just say people are trying to talk about Gary and David through the lens of just maybe a negative trait or two. One that definitely wouldn't be considered something good in the most modern of sensibilities. Again, I'm not going to go into every exact allegation here, but let's just say it's a lot of negativity that's trying to be thrown at it, and there's lots of different takes on that. But the truth of the matter is, guys, first, everybody's just calm down, right? Because just like everybody else, the truth is Gary and David were complex people who were also products of the time and place they lived, and their experiences, natural tendencies, environment, and multiple other influences on human behavior and thought that they may have come in contact with. In the same vein, most people you see as a hero are far from perfect, and not all important people have been what you may see as good people. And now, I'm not implying that Dave or Gary are bad or anything here. I'm just saying that as a general statement about people. But that is the issue with being people, with being a human, isn't it? We can all make good decisions just as easily as we can make bad ones. We can all have good thoughts just as easily as we can have bad thoughts. Now, what's my take on all of this? Well, let me try to explain it this way. I have a personal life rule. Well, two that I really like to go for. Number one, I try to not pass judgment on anybody. I mean, obvious things that people can do that are terrible, of course. Common sense applied here. But I do try my best to not judge people because it's not my place. I don't believe that's my place. The other little life rule I like to have is that if I really do like a band, a musician, writer, actor, any kind of artist of any medium that might have any bit of fame, I go out of my way to enjoy the art they create, but not to really learn a whole lot about the creator. Now, why is that? Because I know people are people, and you'll inevitably find that someone you like did something you very much don't like, or agree with for that matter. People are just people, no matter where they fall in society or level of fame that they may have. Now, I basically feel a certain degree of separating the art from the artist with reason and common sense is the best policy. I do believe in giving credit to where credit is due, however, and I also feel that that particular idea is within the overall spirit of the tabletop role-playing game community at large. So once more, I want to thank you, Gary and David, for what you guys gave us. It's a hobby that I love, and nothing in this world is perfect, but this is still a hobby that I love. So thank you for giving us that hobby, Gary and David. Now back to the golden age of tabletop RPGs. After Gary and David successfully released Dungeons & Dragons in 1974, it caught on quite well and was, by every account from what I've looked at, a huge success. But it was limited by the analog times they were in, and by the fact that the community around it was very niche and not as public as we see today. Despite that, early game players, GMs, and game designers found ways to exchange ideas and even argue about them, play games, create zines and supplements, and even create other tabletop RPGs of different genres and systems, which gained fan bases of their own, all before the hobby was fully defined. Also, I'm not going to get into it here, but check out the Satanic Panic and how in some ways that may have actually helped the game be a little bit more popular, although did cause the game to change in some ways that people didn't like as well. So I'm not going to get into that history. Look that stuff up yourself. It's interesting to read about, though, if you're into that stuff. Now, the alternative games I was talking about, along with Dungeons & Dragons, went through evolutions for both mechanical and monetary reasons. And those evolutions were basically in the form of different editions of the same game. I won't get into those histories as well. Again, we're brushing over a lot of that stuff to get to the points here. But they all went through some of those evolutions and edition changes. And this spawned a larger and greater community. And a market for pen and paper tabletop RPGs began to grow and really solidified that the community of tabletop role-playing game hobbyists were here to stay. Now, as time goes on and technology grows and begins to influence society, you have that happening along with a well-established community of tabletop role-playing game players and game masters, a popular flagship game to represent what is now an established hobby, and the addition of the internet and all that that implies, and you have an entire culture growing and unprecedented availability of the hobby to people of all socioeconomic backgrounds. Follow that up with a dash of a plague seizing the lands, coupled with popular media consistently promoting that flagship game, and you get an explosion of popularity unmatched in the short history of our hobby. This is, once more, super reductive, and mostly from my perspective, I know, but I'm not trying to teach a history class here, guys. I'm just trying to give you a real basic overview. Hopefully that brings you up to speed to where we are today. But today's tabletop RPG scene, I believe, can boast the largest amount of tabletop games available ever. In fact, when you really look at it, the tabletop RPG community is really a collective of many smaller groups based on the different games, genres, system, and even style of play. And the combination of those things make up their own subgroups. There's a table for just about anyone. What we now have are old tabletop RPG systems, old systems that have been refreshed or renewed, new systems altogether, newer ideas pushing the limits, and the little in-between stuff that can be hard to define. We have more genres than ever. We continue the tradition of great artists creating excellent and memorable work. There are writers and game designers out there not only creating games, but supplements and adventures as well. Some examples here. And a healthy third-party scene also creating supplemental materials and artwork for popular and smaller games. We also have virtual tabletops, making gameplay available for even more people, and there are websites like itch.io, DriveThruRPG, and others that make obtaining rules and adventures easy. We even have games like Basic Fantasy Role-Playing Game and Cairn that are 100% free in PDF form, and I'm talking the entire game, not just part of it. That's not to mention the availability of self-publishing and promoting being more widely available. You have adventures and other supplements that are available for very inexpensive through some of the sites that I already talked about, and much more plentiful than they were and easier to access. And all of this stuff is due to the addition of accessible internet. Now, if you ask me, all of this, when you put it together, equals the most games and players ever in this hobby's history, short as it may be. But I think you get the point here. We're certainly in a golden age of tabletop role-playing games. Now, if I may humbly suggest, as a community, it might do us well to consider doing two things with this knowledge. One, enjoy the ride, because frankly, this level of pop culture popularity, it won't last forever. And two, let's use this opportunity to welcome more people into the hobby. Let's be bridges and not gatekeepers, and help guide newcomers to the hobby and let them know that there are many games out there to try out and explore, and there's definitely one for everyone. The strength of the tabletop RPG community lies in its diversity, its creativity, its openness of sharing ideas and giving credit to the originators of those ideas. In a community this large, there will always be people of those that think differently and probably will even disagree with me. But again, that's people, and that's okay. I have seen this community of hobbyists come together on multiple occasions collectively, and it's really great to see so many people just united by this amazing hobby that we share. Now, as you can tell by now, if you haven't watched my channel before, you could probably tell through this video, I love tabletop RPGs, and I love the community of awesome and creative people that occupy it. That's the overall reason I really started this channel, small as it may be. If you are one of those people that are new to tabletop RPGs and or my channel, welcome. Thanks for stopping by and checking me out. I really do appreciate you doing that. I want to give a big shout out to all the small and independent games and third-party contributors out there. Keep doing what you do and keeping the hobby alive. And finally, I want to give a gigantic thank you and shout out to my just over 440 subscribers as of this recording in December of 2024. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you listening to me ramble about my hobby. I do this for fun, and you guys listening just makes it worthwhile, and I really love it. So thank you so much. But listen up, my people. With so many games to check out in this golden age we are in, there's definitely more coming from my channel, so stay tuned. There are also more reasons than ever for you to get into the hobby. Just be sure that you play for fun first. Thanks for watching, everybody.